parents are getting older, what do you advise people as they get older, how to sort of safety proof their home?
Mhm. Yeah, so Nikhil, that's a very important point, and the reason this is becoming more and more important is if you look at India's population trend, it's actually increasing more in the age group which is geriatric or even above 60, and by 2050 or 2055, if I'm not mistaken, it's said that 20 to 25% of our country's population will actually be made up of individuals above the age of 60 to 65. Now, why this is startling or important from the point of fall prevention or mobility and balance is because these patients, or for example, they come into the casualty with a hip fracture. So every second call I probably get from the casualty is a classic story of a 70, 75-year-old patient who slipped in the bathroom, has had a fall, has fractured their hip, and now needs to undergo a surgery to fix their hip or replace their hips. So, why is this important and what can be done? Firstly, as we mentioned, muscle strengthening exercises are, of course, important. But in these patients, what is even more important is to introduce the concept of balance exercises, such as simple balance exercises like standing on one leg or walking on a straight line, touching your heel and toes alternatively on a straight line, and avoiding the mistake of polypharmacy. A lot of times now we are in the era of specialization. So you go to one doctor who gives you two medicines, you take your parents or your grandparents to another doctor who gives them four other medicines. And all these medicines are interacting with each other in ways that are not anticipated by each individual doctor. And that actually causes a lot of disturbances in the balance that the body has to play while walking. So what can you do to really prevent these falls is it's quite simple, because whenever we have patients who come into the casualty with a fall, it's 90% of the times it's that they've had a fall at home, and most often they've slipped and fallen in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Why is again this important to prevent these falls? Is because hip fractures, like you mentioned, are considered as the sentinel event or a terminal event in the lives of these patients. Because at 1 year from a hip fracture, the mortality rate is actually 20 to 30%. So 20 to 30% of geriatric patients who have a hip fracture can't really make it beyond 1 year from that point in time. Now, like I mentioned, the good news is that it's largely preventable. So simple modifications like the path from the patient's bed to the bathroom should be free of any rugs or mats or any cords, cables, wires that you may have. At the same time, in the bathroom, you can install some grab bars or handrails, which makes it easier for them to sit and stand from the toilet seat or when they're having a shower. Avoid having polished or slippery tiles in the bathroom. You can install those non-skid mats that you get, which will prevent these falls because there's often water on the floor. And again, you can keep a torch or some light near the bed of the patient, which they can use when they wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. At the same time, avoid having your parents and grandparents wear slippers because that often triggers a fall. So it's better if they wear closed footwear and even use some walking aids for patients who have Parkinson's and balance issues or those who've had a stroke in the past. For them, it's very important to use a walking stick or a walking frame, especially in the house when they're left unsupervised. And last but not the least, you should have their vision checked periodically every year or two to prevent these falls.